Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to PSGL. George Morgan here, your commentator, alongside me, TK, who is going to be rounding off the season with me.
Down the inside,
absolutely impossible season.
This is for the win between these two.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
He needs to get it done now.
Blakey will dive to the inside.
We'll go bust. We got our elbows out.
Ronard takes the lead.
Because here comes Alfie Butcher.
Can't really complain with that one.
It's not going to be easy. The pressure is on, of course.
Yarda Watmere is your champion.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome back to PSGL here for round 7 of the season 42 PSGL PCF2 Championship. I'm back finally after 4 rounds of being away It's great to be back in the commentary box alongside Omi, who's been here all season, as he always is. Welcome in, Omi. Big race today. Well, I'd say big qualifying because Singapore, so difficult to make moves. It is all down to that qualifying and that race strategy, isn't it?
It really is. Qualifying is going to be so important, as you mentioned, and that has very much gone a long way in deciding our championship standing so far. Not only that, but we've also, of course, had chaos and had plenty of carnage in the race. As you can see, we've had a disqualification. We've had 2 bans also come in. So it has been a very crazy last couple of rounds. What it has put us in a situation of is a very close championship. Cameron Dowds leading it on 42 points, 13th in Brazil. So his advantage could have been so much more heading into this race, but due to the poor result at Interlagos, it has very much closed things in. Given a chance to Conrad Bohm, who went back-to-back with victories in Interlagos Season 41 and Season 42, and Hietala has fought his way through as well, and has become in the last few races, of course, Brazil being the outlier, but he very much came fighting back. But it is Alves, Nathan, who has dropped down pretty much because of that disqualification when it came to Zandvoort, and then the ban that he had for Brazil.
Yes, not good, and it shows that your actions, you know, give you consequences, and that has really not looked well at all for Nelson Alves, who, if that didn't happen, could probably be running away with the championship, you know, without being, you know, kind of mean to any others above him. He's a very quick driver and probably on paper top 2, top 3 easily in this championship. So 2 rounds, big mistake, of course, has really harmed him heading into the midpoint part of the season. But of course, we still have 4 races to go. We're here tonight for Singapore, and then next week it's off to Belgium. Spa-Francorchamps, a very interesting track, mainly because of it being such a well-known track, a track that you drive in many different games apart from F1. The lap times are always close because every driver knows how to drive that circuit at top pace. And then, of course, we head to Abu Dhabi for our penultimate round, and then it's not that far of a trip over to Saudi Arabia, where we head to the Jeddah Corniche circuit for the finale, which I think if we have a championship battle headed into Jeddah, I absolutely can't wait, because that will be a spectacle to watch, of course, with the fact there's walls pretty much everywhere, and you've got 2 drivers, or maybe even more, fighting out for that Season 42 title. But, Omi, it's not long until we head into qualifying. We are just loading in at the moment, so we'll head ourselves over to the race screen, as we'll shortly be getting everybody in. I mean, heading into this race tonight, as I said earlier on Twitter, big race for both Dowds and Bohm heading into this, because, of course, Cameron Dowds, no points scored in Brazil. It was a 13th place, but it was a win for Conrad Bohm. His 3rd podium of the season, and it's his 3rd podium of 4 finishes. So if he can carry on with that trajectory, he should be on for another podium again, which then means Cameron's got to go one step better and automatically be going for a win.
Yeah, that is how very much the cards lie heading into today. And, well, as we're taking a look, it's raining. We had this in F3 qualifying a few moments ago. We've got it now in F2, and the weather is going to throw another curveball. We've had plenty of sessions this season which has had rain come and go, and this is going to be another one which just is going to make the exam question a little bit more harder, and everything we've mentioned now has something else as the top layer.
Well, Omi, what did I say to you before we went live? It will be boring without rain. I think the game listened to me because there's rain. This will definitely make qualifying more intense because with the rain, we don't know if it's going to get more wet, if it's going to get drier, or if it stays the same. And then that's just about getting the consistent laps in. So a big qualifying session around a track which is kind of necessary when it comes to qualifying. If you don't qualify well, you've got no chance of scoring big points because it's so difficult to overtake. Yes, you can rely on strategy, but with the fact these drivers have all got those top-level engineers, they're all going to be going for very similar things. So it's not like someone's going to go for, you know, a ridiculous strategy and it works, because I guarantee other drivers and other engineers have got that strategy in their mind. So that is going to make it interesting. I mean, when it comes to the dry strategies, you know, you're looking at your classic hard, medium, medium, hard. If it's wet, that's when anything can get involved, because you can start to see drivers maybe going all the way to the end without pitting, having to save their tyres. Some will go for an early pit stop and go long on that second stint, and some will go really long and then go for a dash at the end. So I think, you know, whether it's dry or wet, big race for the engineers, because the drivers rely a lot on what information they give them.
Yeah, and that's proven across the last few rounds. We've got some great minds as well, helping and assisting the drivers through this season. Cameron Dowd sliding all over the place. Alexander Dimas, the driver now that we cut to as well, doing the exact same at the moment. Currently 16th in the standings. Has had a podium to his name. That was in what was an interesting day at the Baku City Circuit earlier on this season. I think when it came to qualifying, well, yeah, when it came to qualifying, especially the end of that definitely set the tone for that evening. And then the race was okay. It was a bit of a Baku style race, but we didn't get to we couldn't match qualifying, which it was going to be hard to do anyway.
No, and of course this man here, Elliot Tomasetto, was one to take a podium in that race. Of course, has had an up and down season, 12th at the moment, but it seems like he always has an up and down season. When me and yourself only saw him in E-Series as well, he turned up sometimes and you think, right, he's going to be pushing for a top team here. He's in the top 5, he's in the top 10. Other times you think, well, how's he got into the league? Because he's right at the back and do nothing. You never know what you're going to expect with Elliot Tomasetto, and that's not being mean, because he's just a little bit inconsistent. If he can sort his consistency out, he will next season, and heading on to F126 or F125.5, is that the right word? F125.5
yes.
or 2.0. He will definitely be a championship contender in F2. He's just got to sort that consistency. So we do have laps starting to come through. Let's have a look at Scott Holmes in 17th at the moment. Let's see what he can do in that Aston Martin.
Yeah, let's see what he can do as we watch him navigate his way through now this middle part of the lap, the middle sector. Once again, very close through to the walls, but just looking to try and stay out of them at the moment. And then, of course, trying to get a good banker lap underneath him as well. You're going to be seeing plenty of errors coming and plenty of mistakes for certain drivers. So if you can start the session on a high, that will very much bode well for the remaining 14 minutes that we'll have of this qualifying session. Remember, 1 point available for pole position as well. So there is still championship implications, and it can very much help your championship. And when we have got a battle this season where it is so close, those points will matter.
Oh, definitely. Sometimes it comes down to 2 or 3 points. We've seen that in the past, not just in F2, but I remember last season in F4 you had 3 drivers heading into the total 5 points apart. You never know what's going to happen, and that's why sometimes you've got to just be striving for an extra point here and an extra point there, as Scott Holmes goes quickest ahead of Cameron Dowd by 3/10. Pasquale Ranieri is second off the pace at the moment on his opening lap. A few more drivers looking to come through and set their first laps in the session. Just trying to find who's next. I think it's Alexander Dimas, but we'll keep an eye here on Stephen Vasso as he makes his way into the final couple of corners in the V-carb. Of course, that chicane is probably one of the only overtaking spots you get around here. If you can get a good run with that DRS, you could get a move through into there as Dimas goes quickest. Our first driver into the 39s. And Stephen Vasso just making his way into the top 5 with a 141.144. But I think one thing to notice about Alexander Dimas is we saw a lot of times this season, I think it was in Austria or something, or sometime earlier on, really quick in quali. So expect a lot from him in these wet weather conditions.
Yeah, he could definitely be one to watch as well. A 4th when it came to Baku, a 6th, as you mentioned, when it came to Austria. So he can very much spring it out as well at a random moment. And, well, could this be the moment for him? Currently first, the driver you've just seen come over the line, Nelson Alves, 2nd place. As we now look over to Tope.
He's got damage and he's got soft tyres on.
Lovely.
Is he doing a last to first and thought, oh, let's just go out and have a bit of fun? Possibly.
I mean, they were getting the drifting in a few moments ago in F3. Now, Tope doing it for us here in F2. But the difference is we are very much still fighting away with lap times through this session. So Dimas with the early advantage. All of the other drivers still trying to, first of all, just get a time on the board. We're taking a look at Rosen, who actually did one better than you. He was able to get 2 drivers a penalty in the last round. You've been successful by getting 1 driver a penalty each round, I think, to start the season. But yeah, Rosen did one better. He went for 2.
Oof, that's harsh. At least I wasn't there to give him it, because me and Jensen speak quite a lot. I think he'd be rather annoyed with me. Pasquale was at the time because he wasn't too happy. He just put mate after the stewards' inquiries come through. But we've made up since, don't worry. We're back on good terms. But I suppose that's the life of a commentator. Sometimes we are going to annoy drivers, but it's also my job to kind of not act as a steward, but kind of be here to say, right, you shouldn't be doing that, mate. You're probably going to get reported. That's my due diligence of helping out Kryptonite, who we know gets a lot of strive for his stewarding. As here is Larry Talkie up to the line, goes quickest at 39.0. So either an insane lap or the track is getting better. But I have noticed here on board Larry Talkie, Omi, I can't see any rain.
Yeah, absolutely. It appears like it is beginning to fade away from, the night skies here at Singapore. So the softs, which Tope, was utilising for a bit of a drift show, but soon they could actually be used to try and get really the foot flat to the floor and try and set a quick lap here around the Marina Bay Street circuit. Scott Holmes now the next driver to go top in the Aston Martin. The circuit will continue to move forward even on these intermediate compound of tyres. It doesn't look like we'll be on it for long. DRS now enabled, and we're already going to start to see the switch come in for the drivers to possibly now begin flirting with the soft tyres.
Yes, I'd imagine so. Now the DRS has been enabled, the track should be dry. Yes, it might take a minute or two for it to get to its full dry conditions, but it will certainly be heading that way already, as Stephen Vasso, I would imagine, will be pulling into the pits. Yes, and I'd imagine that Larry Talkie and Tope will as well, because there's no point staying out on a set of the Inters when it's going to be dry very, very soon. Tope here, yes, he's already at a 135 before he heads to the chicane, so he'll definitely be making his way back in unless... No, because he's still got that damage, so I'd imagine he'll go in and get that front wing changed. And then we should see Larry Talkie make his way in, followed by Jensen and then Scott Holmes. And then we should see a couple of soft runners out on track. I do notice the first... it's an intermediate tyre for Gabriel Quintino. So he's not opting for the soft tyres, whereas I believe that's Joe Murphy is on the soft. So still, it seems we're at that crossover point here, Romy.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Murphy, the pole sitter from Kota, round number 4. And we've had plenty of drivers who've all been able to get their name in the mix this season. When it does come to one lap, could we be about to get another driver join that party by the end of 9 minutes? That's what we have in this qualifying session, our 7th one of the season. And it's going to hopefully lead to somewhat of an interesting race. Whatever way we'll get there, let's wait and see. We can always have a little bit of hope as well, but when it comes to this qualifying, the circuit will be moving forward all the time, so it's guaranteed for the drivers to be improving further and for it to hopefully be a competitive battle all the way until the end. I think we had the qualifying at Austria earlier on, which we were mentioning Gabriel Quintino took pole position at. That was in a similar condition. Started off wet, proceeded into dry conditions, and it was very much a case of last over the line and who could find the time right at the end. It is going to be a bit of a similar situation here today.
Yes, it certainly will be, as we see as well Sergio Sobrino on track, taking to the Red Bull strategy of warming up the tyres. I don't think it's as intense as what we saw Freddie Rasmussen do with loosening the wheel, but it seems like the drivers are more keen to weave a little bit or just shake the tyres around and get them nice and heated up. So I'd imagine we'll see that through the course of this qualifying session as well, as we do have Gabriel Quintino making his way through in the first sector, but he's on the Inters. Everybody else is on the soft tyres, so that's not going to be the quickest lap from him. So let's have a look here at Joe Murphy, as he makes his way through into the opening corners, and you can see the track is dry, and he's able to, put his foot down fully on those softs.
Yeah, able to get the braking point sorted, able to stand on the power and now attack the opening few turns as well, and of course get very close to the wall in the process at the same time. So very nearly complete then with sector 1, 26.518. He didn't really, of course he went out there, but he didn't really bother with actually setting a proper lap when it comes to the Inters. This is what he was focused on, because of course the drivers would know that the circuit was always going to move to these conditions. This was their aim, and now Joe Murphy trying to get on with it and is trying to set the benchmark for the rest of the drivers to try and aim for. But you can see he's getting the grip so far around the turns of Singapore, and well, every lap he does around this circuit, and that applies to all of the drivers in these final 6 minutes and 30 seconds. They should be going even quicker, and it should be even easier every time they go by. But yes, absolutely, soft tyres can absolutely navigate their way by in absolutely brilliant fashion.
Definitely, and I'd imagine that once Joe completes his lap, he can go around, go back in, and go straight back out again. So every driver should be able to get 2 laps in to end off this qualifying session, and we'll see what the Alpine can do to open up the times here of those on the soft tyres. Quintino goes quickest, but that will be beaten very quickly by Joe Murphy, a 127.148. As many more cars are coming through into the final couple of corners. I'm just trying to kind of have a look to see who's near the end of a lap. One of the Mercedes is coming through. It won't be Pasquale Ranieri, it'll be Tom Roberts, but he's had an invalidation, so no lap time for him, as Cameron Dowds goes quickest by 0.4 of a second with a 126.781. Let's have a look here at the Ferrari of Sergio Sobrino, as Tony Hietala goes quickest again with a 126.442. Tamas Kokeni into second place, a nice lap for him in the Kick Sauber. There's a couple more cars are coming through. Ranieri up into the top 4 there in the Mercedes. Race Imtiaz now goes up into 4th in that Red Bull. Elliot Tomasetto up to P2 on that front row. And Sobrino goes quickest by 7/1000ths of a second, and now has that provisional pole. But with the way the lap times are coming down here, Omi, that will not last for very long.
Yeah, absolutely. Sobrino's been second on 2 occasions this season. So far first, but he'll have to keep producing that every lap that the drivers make their way through. The next one to produce it is our most recent race winner when it comes to F2, Conrad Bohm. 1 minute 26.316 as well. That's the lap time that he's now put. Ferrari 1-2 at the moment, but now as they rotate their way by, it'll continue changing, ebbing and flowing, and it'll all be about who can really produce it and keep it tidy when they make their way through on the final lap, and as well, who's going to be last over the line. That is still to come, as now the drivers, some of them make their way into the pit lane, some still trying to set faster laps.
Indeed, and then we have Scott Holmes, who goes up into 13th, so not the best lap there for him, but of course it was his first as well on those soft tyres. But we see 2 Ferraris at the front, Red Bull not that far behind. I think we all remember what happened at Singapore with 2 Ferraris and a Red Bull. That could get interesting down at turn 1, but I think we could see that Singapore scenario happen at any track here in PSGL, because you never know what the drivers are thinking of making their way down to the first couple of corners, as I believe everybody will be heading back in, and then it's back onto a new set of soft tyres, and it's one more lap around the Marina Bay circuits here in Singapore, as he is Stephen Avasso down in 15th currently. Not the best lap on the board, 8/10 off from that fastest time. He overtakes a Williams and will make his way into the pit lane. And in the chat as well, Finley saying expecting big things from Joe here. He's been practicing for weeks. Well, if he's been practicing for weeks, shouldn't really be 8/10 off pole, should he, in 14th? So expecting a lot more from Joe if that's the case, but I'd imagine he's not been practicing for a few weeks, and Finley's trying to make him look a lot worse than he actually is, as he's got Holmes making his way back into the pits. Definitely needs an improvement from him, but of course he came into the season, I believe, as a reserve this season, so you're not really expecting him to be right up there at the top, are you? You know, he comes in, fills in, and of course after winning that F4 championship last season, it's a bit of a filler season where it doesn't really matter apart from pride if you win the championship. So for someone like Scott, who's going in knowing he's not going to be fighting for it, he can just develop a little bit more ahead of next season on F126, where hopefully he's in F2 again and he'll be racing with a lot of these drivers. So it gives him a little bit of, I suppose, a bit of a scout into how these drivers battle and drive on track. Because you see a lot, you know, your Leo Lunds, very attacking. There's other drivers who are very passive, and that's something you learn when you go through a whole season.
Yeah, absolutely. It really, really is. And yeah, this is a great chance now for some development to come in. For those drivers who absolutely know that they are not contending for this title. And even for the drivers who are contending for the title. I mean, we have had a few drivers, of course, Angelo Di Ortenzio being one of them. Jan Halliday as well, a couple of seasons ago. They won on the last season when it came to F124. Had to come back and prove it on F125 in the first few seasons that we had, season 40, that, you know, they can still run at that elite level. And they had to do that because, of course, of that season 39 not being as important. Of course, as you mentioned, for pride, absolutely. But, you know, the drivers have had to come back and prove it. So whoever you really are in this field, it is a great chance to continue to develop as a driver and put yourself in a good position for basically the second part of this game.
Certainly, but we have one more lap left around Singapore here to see who will take that pole position. The first car that will go for a lap is one of them that hasn't got a lap on the board just yet. It's Francesco Largo, of course, has had some brilliant performances in qualifying and in the race this season. And like many other drivers, like 9 others, he's got a single podium to his name. Of course, it's a bit of a weird season. I was saying to Omi earlier, you've got 3 drivers who've got 2 podiums or more, being Boehm, Alves and Dowds, and then 10 drivers who have only got a single podium. So it's, are the top 3 really good, or is everybody else still struggling a bit? I'm sure we'll find out with 4 rounds to go. But here we go, Francesco Largo. Omi, he's the first one, or one of the first ones, to go in for a flying lap.
Yeah, absolutely. Sends it into 1. We go on board through 2 and 3, and then it's all about getting on the power. Of course, you get a bit of exit room there out of turn 3, and nicely utilised by Largo, who's going to now look to try and keep it clean, but most of all, just push quite literally as hard as possible, because, you know, as he is one of the first to begin a lap, it could put him in a it might put him in a position, first of all, as he comes over the line, that is not completely ideal. I might then load some pressure on. But yeah, he needs to absolutely set a time on the board here on this final lap with 10 seconds to go, because, you know, he's right now not got any lap time with him. Same applies to Tom Roberts as well. So 19th and 20th, they've got to get on with it.
Indeed they have, and here is Tony Hietala, who's going to be the first one to set the final time in this qualifying session. Just over a 10th off pole. We know he can bring some masterclasses in qualifying. He's up by a 10th and a half nearly in the first 2 sectors. That's enough to challenge for that pole position that currently Conrad Boehm hands. And of course, that's not good for Cameron Dowds, being down in P10 with 1 lap left to go. Of course, Conrad will find time. Cameron needs to find a lot more. So through into the final corner here for Tony Hietala. Up to the line, 3rd in the championship. What can he produce? He goes on to provisional pole. Next will be not Nelson Alves, it'll be one of the other Williams. It'll be Cameron Dowds. What can he produce here at the final part of qualifying? It's P3 on the board for him as Race Imtiaz manages to go up into the top 7, and Francesco Largo only manages just to get into the top 10 as Joe Murphy makes his way into the top 7. Alves jumps ahead of his teammates and takes 3rd by 1,000th, and Sabrino is back onto provisional pole position by 11 1,000ths of a second to Tony Hietala. We've just seen Tamas Kokeni, Paul qualifying in 14th, and Dimas up to P4 in the kick saber. A few more laps to come through, and of course, one of the main ones to keep an eye on here is Conrad Boehm as Tudor Pressakan up into the top 7, and Boehm into the barriers and will not find an improvement as Ranielli in the Mercedes moves up to P4. A couple more laps to come through. Let's see what Larry Talkie can do in that McLaren. Can he get ahead of his teammate? He already is, and he goes even further ahead. P9 for Talkie, and I think Conrad Boehm there, Romy, will not be happy with P3 because P1 was probably very much a possibility.
Yep, very much a possibility indeed. And that is a possibility, well, that has faded away. And Sergio Sabrino has taken advantage of it to take a second pole when it comes to PCF2.
Indeed, and of course it was Sabrino on pole ahead of Hietala in 2nd place, Boehm 3rd, Pasquale Ranielli 4th, and Alexander Dimas rounding off that top 5. Nelson Alves in P6, Cameron Dowds disappointing for this track in P7, a lot of work for him to do ahead of Tudor Pressakan. Laurie Torquay and Joe Murphy rounding off your top 10. Then it's Race Imtiaz in 11th, followed by Ellie Tomasetto, Francesco Largo, Scott Holmes, Stephen Vasso, Jensen Rayson, Tamashko Kenny, Gabriel Quintino, top 8, and then Tom Roberts. No lap time set for him on the board, so a lot of work to do from 20th position. But heading into this one, Omi, who have you got your eyes on? I mean, Sergio looks quick, but I mean, then again, you say, but yet again, it's the race. But around here, if you're in pole position, you're in such a good spot just to kind of run away with it. And then as long as you get your strategy decent, you know, you're in the best position from the lead because it's so difficult to make moves. You've got maybe turn 1 at a stretch and then turn 16. Apart from that, you've got to force a move, which we all know can lead to penalties.
Yeah, it can lead to penalties, it can lead to chaos, and chaos is exactly what we've seen across this campaign so far. So you've got to try and make sure that you avoid that. But yeah, it's a great chance for Sergio Sabrino. Great chance for Tony Hietala as well. He's got the inside line, making his way down towards the first corner. So it's going to be an interesting run down there, and we could very much be seeing the two, battle at the front, and could it open the door? Are they all going to be able to keep it clean as well at the start? So many question marks, and soon we're about to get some answers when we turn it over to those 5 red lights and let them loose really down towards the first turn and then into the first bit of the race as well. And then, of course, the pit stop phase could very much change things later on. And we'll see what sort of F2 chaos we get here tonight.
Certainly is. It shouldn't be too long until we get underway for the race. Let's have a look quickly at the tyres. Mediums and hards all around. That's going to make our job 10 times harder, Omi, because everyone has got different strategies.
They really are. How's it all going to shape out? All 5 lights are on. And PSGL is racing on the streets of Singapore. Even get away off the front row, but Sergio Sabrino chops across. Is it going to be a Ferrari 1-2? No. Conrad Bohm cannot get himself in the mix there as well. So it's Sabrino, then Hietala. The battling is happening through the mid-pack as they try and go 2 by 2. Dimas is ahead and battling with Pasquale Ranieri, and he turns it into P4. And then it is Ranieri in 5th. Alves is in 6th. Pressacan's looking to try and go on the attack as we go wheel to wheel between Ranieri and Dimas, and they are going to be very close together, heading into the braking zone. Does the kick Sauber exit ahead? It's super tight between the pair of them, but inside line for Dimas should gain him the place, and Alves is there in the mix as well on his return back to F2 after being out for a round.
Indeed, a great start here as that was close there as Ranieri went back up the inside into turn 9. But really great battle in there, but of course Nelson Alves getting the better of the Mercedes as they all make their way through towards what you see with the Singapore sling section, under the Anderson Bridge and then onto the brakes for the hairpin. A really intense start, as that's going to be a send there from Tudor Pressacan up the inside of Pasquale Ranieri. He's got a decent run down towards the outside of turn 14, but of course, has he got enough power? Yeah, he's right ahead before they even get onto the brakes there. So a great move from Tudor, and then also Joe Murphy going ahead of Cameron Dowds, who of course is on those hard tyres, second in the train on those on the hards. Is he going to fight back into the chicane? No, he's a little bit more wise to that and just sits behind for now. And one driver who will be looking to make moves in the chicane will be Francesco Largo. He's got 2 drivers ahead who are on that harder compound of tyre than him. So, of course, it's ideal for him to get those moves done early and stick with those on the same tyre. But, of course, up at the front, it is going to be Sergio Sabrino that leads the Grand Prix ahead of Tony Hietala and Conrad Bohm as Tamas Kokeni moves up into 14th. But, talking of strategy, of course, the medium and hard medium, definitely the ones that drivers are going for, as we can see. Now, if that hard medium works, that puts Tony in such a good position. He's up in P2. He's 7 positions ahead of the next car on the hard. So if this is the strategy, this could be a game changer here for Tony and fighting for that victory. Of course, he is 3rd in the standings. He's only 8 points back from Cameron Dowd. So as much as we were talking about Conrad Bohm, Hietala in this position here could be more of a worry.
Yeah, he really, really could. In a great position as it gets very, very close. But of course we get to single file. As well as that's kind of what you need to be doing through these couple of corners, and the road can open up for a little stand if you're feeling brave later on in the race, but that's something that you'd go for well, if you're in the mid-pack, if you're at the back, and that's Tamas Kokeni making the move because of course he's on the medium compound of tyres, the lowest driver to be on that medium compound of tyre. And yeah, great and a great thing for Tony Hietala to have that buffer, because when we see the medium drivers all basically pit, there's going to be a big gap between Hietala and the next hard runner. So if that strategy does work out overall, it'll be him having the fun later on and, you know, not having anyone else to contend with in terms of someone on the same strategy as him.
Certainly, as a couple of drivers are closing in as we make our way down to turn 1. Tudor Pressacan can go for a send on Nelson Alves. Not normally a send we see, going from, you know, being more than a car length behind into the first corner. It was bold and brave from Tudor, but he knows that you need to be making moves early around Singapore. Of course, while you've got the fresh tyres, use them to your advantage. As we do see as well, Joe Murphy now on the back of Pasquale Ranieri, who's had such a poor start, up from P4 down to P8 as Joe goes for the send, nearly takes the Haas with him into the braking zone of turn 7. And now Pasquale back on the outside, but can't quite get enough space to go alongside, so backs out and concedes that P7 spot as they all make their way through the next complex of corners. Looking further back as well, Tamas Kokeni still looking to go ahead of Ray Simtiaz, the next hard runner for him to contend with. And then, of course, further ahead, those gaps are really starting to shorten down. But, of course, you can't make moves. That's the issue, as that's going to be Tudor Pressacan trying to make a move and prove me wrong in towards a hairpin. Can Alves get the better line down to turn 14? I think he can. But Tudor Pressacan, I don't normally see him this aggressive. We love to see this, don't we, Omi, around this track?
Yeah, we really, really do. And, well, it's still not resolved. Still, the pair running wheel to wheel. Pressakan beginning to inch ahead. Can he now try and complete the move? We're watching with Murphy, who's got the best view of this battle, heading into the braking zone. And, in fact, they involve Alexander Dimas, because Alves sent it up the inside of him. And, yeah, it is getting aggressive between those drivers at the moment as we make our way round the final corner. And now Murphy is very much in striking range as well, but we'll go single file into the first turn. So that was very much interesting. Alves and Pressakan battling with each other, and then very nearly taking out Alexander Dimas in the process.
Well, he did hit Dimas, but it wasn't enough to take him out, I suppose. But I think the stewards will definitely be looking at that one. Of course, Alves just broke a little, I think it was Alves, broke a little bit late, and then decided to barrel roll into Alexander Dimas. So, not good at all, but of course, that's the consequences of battling around this circuit. Not always is it going to be clean, fresh hands. So, yes, not too good there for Nelson Alves. Of course, he's still ahead of Tudor Pressakan, but has now got a little bit of that end plate missing. So, you know, he's going to be, it's a bit of a disadvantage aerodynamically. So he's going to have to try and work through that one during the course of this race. As Top A goes ahead of Jensen Rowson, who's down in 17th now to 18th as they make their way through. And of course, this is such a horrible race because if you're down at the bottom like Tom and Gabriel, Jensen, Top 8, you're not realistically going to score points around this track. So you've got to really just hope it goes your ways. Yet again, here's a battle for 5th.
Yep, this is still absolutely raging on at the moment. Pressakan all over the back as well of Alves, who's just right now holding the track position. But Pressakan getting closer all the while and right now just looming large in the mirrors. And yeah, after that moment, I'm sure he'll regroup as well of what happened on the previous lap and then just make sure that basically they're not costing each other at this phase in the race. But if a chance is there, he'll absolutely try and go for it. And possibly a chance is there in towards the first turn. He's been looking for this move for a while. It's battling through the opening few turns of the circuit. And Alves and Pressakan have been really going at it to start this contest so far. And Pressakan, after trying for so long, is in 5th. Can Murphy now try go through as well?
On the outside here for Joe Murphy, a tap into the barriers as they make their way out to turn 3. And it's down the long straight here with that DRS because also Ranielli's there. He has to shift over to the right-hand side. Joe Murphy's going for the attack again on Nelson Alves and the Williams. Off the track goes Murphy as they head their way through. And still, Pasquale Ranielli looking to get involved as down in 8th. Now up to try and get into 7th as they make their way through. And it seems this time around that battle has died off. But of course, that battle in there and the lack of wing for Nelson Alves has really put Tudor Pressakan into a poor spot because he's not in that DRS of the others ahead, so now he's got to push even more to get back within that 1 second and have an advantage.
He really, really does. So that is how currently it lies at the moment. Lap 5 out of 31 here at Singapore, and what usually turns out to be one of our longer races of the season here at PSGL. Very much the drivers pushing on.
I was going to say, yeah, which we all love. Singapore being the longest race of the calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of all ones that we could have the longest, we have Singapore as well. So we're here for an extended period of time to some degree, but hopefully these drivers can somehow find ways to keep us entertained, which I'm sure, it being PCFG, they sometimes can.
Now, that was an easy move there by Pasquale Ranielli. I'd imagine that Nelson had a bit of a tank slapper on the exit at the final corner. So, really poor there for Nelson. And, you know, your race isn't over, but it's going to be so difficult now for Alves to score points. Has dropped from 5th to 8th in what? 2-3 laps. So, you're thinking the top 10 is probably over for him. Of course, I'd imagine it won't be that hard of a fight to Dowds and Tolkien because they're on a different strategy anyway. And, you know, will gradually be quicker on those hards compared to those on the mediums. Given the fact Alves has got damage, he'll be even slower than Dowds and Tolkien, as they all make their way through in towards turn 9 again. And Pressakan losing time to Alexander Dimas, losing more time. You'd imagine they're the top 4. Play your strategy right. You've got a top 4 in the bag. And of course, for Tony and Conrad, perfect. But not for Cameron Dowds, who's down in 9th. He's 7 positions back from both of them. He's got to, you know, you're looking at top 5 minimum just because of the gaps in the field. Unless Tudor can start to play a bit of a masterclass and get himself back within a second, but you start to think here that gap will just keep growing and growing lap on lap as we head back down to the chicane at 16 and 17, and that's another lap completed here as we head on to lap 7. But I think as well, Omi, one thing to talk about is we've saw damage already. We've seen drivers get very close to walls, it's not a surprise if we see a safety car pop up here, is it? You know, most races we see here at Singapore, you've got a safety car somewhere in it.
Yeah, that is always most likely to be the case. Eventually, somewhere, we can get an intervention which can very much change things up, and that is when it can change things up, because as we've described to you, of course, we've not really got a wet race now. So, you know, the drivers and the engineers, they all know what they're doing, especially at this point of the game cycle. Of course, it's a medium to hard, hard to medium type thing, as Dowds now easily gets past Nelson. Alves, of course, with Alves beginning to struggle, and the hards, of course, getting better and better and better. But yeah, the drivers and teams all very much know at this point what to do. But if a safety car comes late on and, you know, everyone bolts on softs right to the end, you know, that can very much change up the complex of the race. So there could definitely be plenty of things that can change it. So we're never too far away from a safety car here around the street circuit of Marina Bay. But, you know, Hietala, it's going well for him at the moment, isn't it? Of course, he's on that hard to medium strategy. There's another move as Lari Tulki also makes a bit of an easy pass, runs in deep as well in the process. And momentarily a drag race happens between the pair of them. But yeah, Tulki has got it for the moment. But Hietala's remained in second. He's just really got on with his race. You wouldn't really know that he's on the hards. But he's, you know, he's just been very much emerged in to that train, and he's got on with it. So if he can make it work and continue to make it work all the way through, then, you know, he's going to be in a good position, I think, come later on.
Certainly, and this is just horrible to see for Nelson Alves, of course. First 4 races, he had 3 podiums, 2 seconds and a third. Since then, a DSQ, a ban, and most likely no points here today in Singapore. Horrible, horrible, horrible for Nelson Alves, and it just kind of lacks, you know, it helps lack your motivation heading into the rest of the season, because after this race, he's probably still only going to be about 15, 20 points behind. But because of the results, you're already thinking, oh, I don't really care anymore, season's over. So that's horrible for Nelson. No point scorers in 3 races, because it will definitely be 3 today, I think, because he's just dropping back through the field. It's not what you like to see for someone who could easily be challenging for that championship fight. As we continue on with battling further ahead, though, Alexander Dimas all over the back of Conrad Bohm. Of course, Conrad, he's fighting for a championship, and Alexander Dimas, he's fighting to get some more points on the board. Another podium possibly for him, of course, for a 3rd place. Back in Azerbaijan in round 2. Would love to get another one here 5 races later. And I think if you could get a podium here, that kind of shows his level of, you know, his level of performance at a street circuit. A P3 at Baku and a P3 here. I think that shows where you're quite good at, doesn't it, Omi?
It does. It really, really does, as well. As, well, we cut to some more, unfortunately, of Nelson Alves just fading down, and a day just continuing to get worse and worse. And, I mean, as you were describing, most likely to be another race where he doesn't get points. I mean, with every position that he's losing, it's very much showing. And, you know, I mean, of course he was banned from last time. Of course he was disqualified from the round before that. But, you know, his points tally stays the same in both of them. Today, yes, he's here, but once again, the point tally is going to stay the same. Of course he's not got a ban. Of course he's been able to come out here and give it a go. But once again, I think this is going to just do worse, as you mentioned, to his motivation, as we now cut back straight to the front.
Indeed, time's been lost there, as Joe Murphy and Tudor Pressakan have been battling it out, and Joe Murphy's got the better of the Romanian as they head their way down towards turn 9 again. And, of course, a great opportunity for Joe Murphy to jump up into the top 5, of course. As his good friend Finley was saying earlier, he's been practicing for 3 weeks, so he should be on pace. It seems he's so at the moment, as Nelson Alves has now dropped down to 19th. No points for him today. Big, big shame for the Portuguese driver as we continue on. And, of course, if Pressakan losing the spots, he'd be quite annoyed because he did so much work again in it. He's now lost it a couple of laps later, as we're now heading on to lap 10 of 31, so nearly a third of the way through the Singapore Grand Prix. And, of course, as it stands, I think the gap in the championship here would be ridiculously close between Tony, Conrad and Cameron. The fact that Tony, of course, is 8 points behind. Tony's 8 points behind. Conrad's 6 points behind. This here could be like 2 or 3 points between the 3 of them. It could be genuinely that close, which is, of course, what I love to see.
Yeah, and you can add me to that list as well. It very much is going to lead to an interesting 3 races. And I mean, we mentioned it earlier, but a championship battle on the streets of Jeddah to wrap it all up could be very, very fun. And, you know, F2 has not had a championship battle go down to the final race so far on this game cycle, so it will be very fun if we can go there and have a really close championship, not just even between 2 drivers, even more in the mix as well. Would definitely be a great way to wrap things up. But first of all, we've still got to get through this race, and then of course the final 2 before the final, before we can get a bit of a judgment of how that season finale on the streets of Jeddah could go. And this is another important part of this championship, and it seems like every round we go, it is still ebbing and flowing, but we're definitely beginning to see who really we think could be in the mix for this championship, which we had a few expectations to start the season. They've completely flown away by the time we did a couple of races.
Certainly, as we see here, leader at the moment of the race, Sergio Sobrino, but let's have a little look further down, because Joe Murphy, Gino Presacan and Nelson Alves have all been into the pit lane onto us at the hards. Of course, we can pit from lap 9, 10 onwards. They should get to the end on these hards if they save the tyres well, and you know, if they're not ripping them to shreds in the corners by pushing too hard. So still doable here for these guys on the one stop, but of course it's going to be a lot more difficult for them if the others ahead on the mediums stay. It's a little bit longer. They're going to have, you know, fresher tyres and make it a bit easy to battle into the corners, as Tony here telling now on the back of Sergio Sobrino, looking to try and take the lead of the Grand Prix. But of course he's on 10-lap-old hards. They'll maybe be better than those 10-lap-old mediums. So it was an easy move, and now he can try and fly away. And of course, to the next car on the hard, it's Dowd, about 5.5 to 6 seconds back. Very good position for him now to start to pull away and make that hard medium his strategy.
Yeah, back over we go to Thomas Kilkenny. Jensen Rosen in behind at the moment. This, of course, 14th and 15th. 2 different strategies in the mix, and definitely not going Kilkenny's way in this race so far. Of course, he is on the strategy which most of the drivers at the front basically are on, of course, bar Tony Hietala, but Kilkenny finds himself very much down the order at the moment. He was able to get a points-paying result in 10th at Austria, but that's all that he's been able to get so far. He'll be hoping to capitalise on things come these final few races of the season, and he's another one just looking to try and secure anything at the moment, but he's very much still pushed on across this campaign, turning up to all the races, and has had a few signs and a few glimpses of positivity, but unfortunately it's just been really a write-off season so far for him, of course, progressing up from F3 to F2.
Indeed, and I'm not one to wish bad for drivers, but I wouldn't mind Dades finishing 8th and Hietala and Bohm hitting 2nd and 3rd, because I have had a little bit of a mathematical brainstorm. Yes, somehow I can do maths. As this is going to be a move from Cameron Dales, looking to go into P5 ahead of Pasquale Ranielli. A nice move, and puts him up a bit higher. But if he was to finish 8th and the other 2 finish 2nd and 3rd, Dales would be 3rd in the championship, a point behind. Hietala and Bohm would be level on points on 46, and Cameron Dales will be on 45. Now, I wouldn't mind that at all. 1 point between the 3. Yes, again, I like to make it clear, I don't want Cameron Dales to do bad. I want a good championship fight. As everyone that's been here with me since like season 30 would know, I'll do anything to have a championship fight on the final round as we continue on with racing. But of course, that move there for Cameron Dales could have changed it a little bit, could maybe help him go a little bit higher. Now breaking away from Larry Tulkey as we do look a little bit higher, and yeah, you can just see the gap here. The mediums to the hards, a big difference at the moment, and Tony Hietala has a 2.1 second gap now ahead of the 2 Ferraris, who then have Alexander Dimas behind. But the issue is here, we know the undercut around most track works. Well, both the Ferraris can't pit on the same lap, so one of them is going to have to lose a little bit of time here by going an extra lap than the other, as we all make our way onto lap 13 of 31. So there's going to be still many laps to go, Omi. It feels like this race will never end, as Jensen Racing now making a move ahead of Top A, as Top A drops into the pit lane and also gets, oh dear me, 20 seconds. 10 seconds for cutting the pit lane entry line, and then 10 seconds for speeding in. I think he just thought, right, full foot to the floor, and let's see what we could how quick we can get into the pit lane, because that's not normally the ideal strategy into the pits, is it?
I mean, yeah, to get well, he got two. So I mean, we usually just see one for one event, but no, he absolutely sent in, as you mentioned as well, as he makes his way back out onto the circuit now on those medium compound of tyres. But yes, the race continuing on, and we're still yet to reach half race distance as well, but we are beginning to see a bit of the pit stop strategies playing out, and I guess the discussion about pit stop strategies beginning to further develop at the same time. But yeah, that's the thing that Ferrari have, as you were mentioning, in terms of they are both together on the circuit, so they won't be able to pit on the same lap, and one's going to have to go after the other.
They certainly will, as here is Conrad Bohm in third at the moment, behind the back of Sergio Sobrino. And of course, they might be teammates, they might be in the same team of Veloci Academy, but Sergio Sobrino, despite not being in that championship fight, has got a win already this season. He'll want two, so he's not going to. I don't think he'll, let Conrad Bohm pass. I think Conrad's going to have to work for it. As Francesco Largo into the pits. Oh, and Alexander Dimas, a 3-second penalty already for multiple warnings. Now, I'm not sure how he's quite done that, because it's very hard around most corners to go off the track. And most of the corners you do go off, you end up getting hit by a curb, which is very tall around some parts of this track. Turn 7 being the main one. Very high curb if you go off track, and it's easy to kind of get lodged onto it. Big shame for Dimas. 14 laps in, you've got 3 seconds. He's now going to feel under pressure, because he's like, right, if I could do that in 14 laps, how many can I get in the next half of the race? So he's now got to force himself to be a little bit more conservative on the power now, because he doesn't want to go wide again and again and again.
Yeah, he doesn't want to at all, because that'll just be adding more and more time and reducing his position by the time the checkered flag falls in about half a race's worth of time. That'll be later on, and we still don't know who is going to be coming over the line as the victor in terms of what strategies are going to play out where. It seems like, though, Hietala definitely is going to be one of the favourites with how this race has begun to play out for him. So we'll wait and see how it will develop. We'll wait and see whether we do get anything crazy like a safety car, because once again, like we mentioned earlier, that can change things. Okay, we were having a discussion about the Ferraris. We're going to get into the pit lane Sergio Sobrino. Conrad Bohm will be the one who will be sent around once again, and Alexander Dimas now also joins Sobrino in the pit lane as we enter lap 15.
But the only 3 left on the mediums, it's Conrad Bohm, Pasquale Ranieri, and Tamashko Kenny. Everybody else has gone in off of the mediums onto us at the hards. Now, where does Sobrino come out compared to Joe Murphy? As they head down the straight in towards turn 1, Murphy and Pressacan will be miles clear of these two, I'd imagine. Yep, there they are, heading their way through to turn 1. And they make their way out to the pit lane. Let's see how far back they are from Pressacan and Murphy. 4 seconds, but they have got 5 lap better tyres. So now they've got to put the base down very quickly. Not burn the tyres up too quickly, because they're going to have to fight past Murphy and Pressacan. So a big couple of laps here for Sobrino, and also for Alexander Dimas, but for him it's not as crucial to catch up to those two, because he's got that 3-second penalty anyway.
Yeah, he has got that, as you mentioned. As we now cut over to Elio Tomasetto, we were mentioning, well, the varying days that he's had across this campaign. Well, he'll be hoping that today can be somewhat of a positive one, but he'll be amongst a lot of the drivers who have started on the hards and then will progress themselves onto the mediums come the later phase of the race, when the time, of course, is right. And then, of course, these are two of, well, the drivers near the front on that strategy, and they will make their way to second and third as Conrad Bohm is going to dive it in to the pit lane. But it's Hietala who is the leader by 7.3 seconds, and this is what we were referencing earlier. He's going to be well clear. The track position was always going to help him, and then he was also able to get ahead of the drivers behind and pull a few seconds on them too. So it's Hietala very much who's going to be with a great chance to come fighting through and basically be on his own, which, you know, you can sometimes be on a possible winning strategy, but usually you have to contend with some other drivers who are also going to be a factor to keep an eye on. But he might have the fun of being basically alone, just trying to pass cars near the end.
Certainly, as we do have a great battle here between Holmes, Imtiaz and Tomasetto. as they head their way through into the middle sector. And then Tudor Pressacan also making a move ahead of Joe Murphy. That's a key one for that race win. Of course, at the moment they are net P1 and net P2. Sabrino and Dimas have brought that gap down slightly. Well, Sabrino has at least. It's 3.2. It was 4 seconds. So in the past lap and a half, the gaps came down by just over a second here. So definitely still within the range of possibility for Sergio Sabrino to make the move and get ahead. You'd imagine by lap 20, he'll be right on the back, and then he's got 11 laps to go ahead. It's going to be a lot, you know, it's still really hard to make the moves, but he's going to have that advantage. So it's about trying to force those two into making mistakes individually and then start to pick them off one by one, as yet again, Elliot Tomasetto on the back of Ray Simtias down into the chicane, and no move being made here. And if anything, they don't want to be making moves because they've got to save all the time they can here now, ready for when they pit onto the mediums, which with 17 laps in, you're looking at around lap 20, maybe a lap before, a lap after. Lap 20 is kind of one of your optimal laps to pit onto the mediums, take them to the end, 11 laps, a lot of work to do. But yet again, by the time you catch up to those on the hards, you will be absolutely flying and should be relatively easy to make the moves as they head their way through to turn 3. But now let's keep an eye on Sabrino. That gap's now down to 2 seconds, and we'll go on board here with the Ferrari. I mean, just see how quickly he can just shave time away from those in the net top 2.
Yeah, that is how it is going to be now. Well, that's where all our eyes will be very much looking to now on the 17th tour of this race as we jump on board with the Ferrari and make our way down towards the braking zone, looking directly behind. And Conrad Bohm makes the pass on Alexander Dimas at the same time. Ranieri also is through on Tope, who of course, well, picked up that double penalty as he entered the pit lane. Not an ideal day for him, but he's very much still raring on, and we've got all 20 still running here on the 17th tour of this race. So the drivers very much pushing through and getting through towards the final phase, and the final phase which will hopefully see some bit of overtaking, and that will hopefully see some of the drivers begin to close up back to one another, and we can see well, some of the scraps that F2 can produce basically anywhere, just out of random, come up in the final stages of this race.
Indeed, as we do see Elliot Tomasetto in first of those on the hards. Of course, yes, Tope was in, but he had that penalty. So, yes, of those that are on the optimal strategy, hard to medium, it's Tomasetto followed by Quintino, who go into the pit lane. Of course, Tudor Pressacan, he's now going to be held up here by Tom Roberts, who he needs to dispatch quickly. Of course, if he can get past Tom Roberts quite quickly, it's not going to harm him. But if he's stuck behind, that allows, you know, Sabrina, well, mainly Conrad Bohm to catch up even quicker. That gap's about 2.5, 3 seconds at the moment. So, of course, the more that Tudor and Joe get caught up, the more it helps those behind, trying to make that strategy work of pitting a little bit later and going for that overcut strategy. As here is Pressacan now on the back of Roberts. Of course, Roberts as well isn't going to slow down and let him through. He's still running his own race down in 8th at the moment. He, of course, will end up falling down to the rear of the field, but you've always got to keep your options open. You never know if anything's going to go your way. Very easily, 10 cars ahead could make a mistake, you could get a point. Not going to happen most likely, but it always could do. So it's always best to kind of still run your race as if you was fighting for points. As Pressacan goes up the inside, it goes for the send on Robertson. Oh, Robertson! Pressacan there going to the barriers. You've got Joe Murphy there as well trying to go through as they head their way down to turn 14. That was a scary moment, and now Sabrino's on the case.
Yeah, a bit of a scary moment as you mentioned, as they still scrap away. Roberts, Sabrino roaring through as well. At the moment with DRS open, and it appears like Sabrino's gone through. Pressacan will just try and hold on, but the battling and the overtaking will be directly in behind, and it's Murphy roaring through the next one to try and make his way through, and that is Conrad Bohm trying to get it all the way back together as into the pit lane comes Tom Roberts, and it's been a chaotic couple of corners.
Well, that was scary, and Roberts is out of the race. He's got frustration there for sure. Of course, Conrad Bohm was trying to go into, well, carry on, overtaking, but then he went for the pit lane. Of course, that doesn't always end well, and nearly sent Conrad Bohm into the barriers. Luckily, it continues on, but of course, Tudor Pressacan with, again, another aggressive send. This time, though, probably some blame on him for that, and because, of course, it sent them both into the barriers, then allowed Joe Murphy to get involved. He then had to back out, and then Sabrino popped up on the scene. Now he's our net race leader. He's got 5 lap better tyres than Pressacan and Murphy. I think he's quite happy that Roberts was there because it's gifted him those 2 spots and gifted him that net race lead here around Singapore with around 12 laps to go. Big moment now for him to come through and maybe go for his second win, but of course the four ahead of him have gone on to a set of the mediums. Look at Tony Hietala. He's not actually that far behind from Sabrino, so it's just the fact there's lots of collateral in front of him he's got to get through on first.
Yeah, and that's what he's dealing with as well at the moment in time as they head down into the braking zone. Getting very, very close now between Dimas and Bohm, who continue to push on. Bohm and Murphy, though, on the exit of the corner. It was Bohm who was actually able to get closer to Murphy. And that's the Alpine and the Ferrari that you can see getting super, super close together. Top three now coming in to the pit lane as they make their way through. Rosen will take over the lead of this race as he continues on. But of course, it'll be the net lead. Now so Sabrino makes his way through. Presakan, Murphy in behind. On board now we go with Bowman Hietala. Hietala already now on the case and looking to try and make some overtakes very much swiftly here in the Red Bull.
Indeed, yeah. Himself and Bohm need to get moves on quickly because they've got way better tyres and drivers around them. As here is Tony Hietala burning the battery in that Red Bull to the inside of Alexander Dimas. It should be an easy pass into turn 7. It is a very easy pass into turn 7. And now Tony Hietala into P6 here in this race. Of course, closing in on the back of Conrad Bohm. Now, Conrad Bohm doesn't want Tony Hietala passing him because, of course, with the strategy they're on, he's the best of those on the hards. He doesn't want a medium runner coming through and, disrupting his progress. Especially a medium runner that will definitely stay ahead. It's not like in 10 laps' time, you're going to see Conrad Bohm making the move again. I think if Hietala goes through, that's that done and dusted in the fight between the Ferrari and the Red Bull. And, of course, now Joe Murphy is going to defend here from Conrad Bohm as they head down to turn 14. But of course, the more Murphy defends and Bohm tries to attack, Tony Hietala can place himself just behind and wait for the moment to strike and possibly go through on the both of them as we head our way back down to turn 17 again. Now Conrad Bohm with the DRS to the outside of the Alpine, but he can't quite get alongside. And I think if Joe Murphy could just place his car perfectly lap after lap, it's going to be difficult for a move to be made.
Yeah, I think if he can just park it, that's one of the things that you can do around this circuit, but it's getting very close out of the final corner. Bohm getting held up by Murphy. Hietala now looking to try and make the move into the first turn. Does he get it done? He does, because of course when it turns into a traction race, it was always going to be his position. Now that's P5. Can he already now try and make the move on Murphy? In a few more meters, we'll get down to the straight, as Alves will have another race where he will not be, well, scoring any point, and he's already out of it, unfortunately for him. This is now the moment where we're going to see the positions change. So Hietala able to get through, as at the same time, now Sabrino catching Rosen and making the move on Rosen as well, out in front. But Hietala with another car clear, and he's right now in a net podium place.
Pony's flying, but that's what we expected. When we saw him on those hards, beyond the pace, if not quicker than Sergio, rather quickly, you know that he's got pace in that Red Bull around this circuit. So this is a really good opportunity now for Tony to possibly come out here and, fight for the win, or at least fight for a top 3. Of course, he's going to get third anyway at the moment because Jenson Rosen has to pit. But of course, ahead of him is Tudor Presakan as well as they head down towards turn 14. Presakan on the inside of Rosen, who doesn't fight it because he doesn't need to. But deep goes both of them as they head into the corner. And now an opportunity for Hietala to go make the move early on here. Goes ahead of Jenson Rosen. Now it's on the attack of Tudor Presakan. But I really don't think that Tudor can do anything to fight here against that Red Bull. As Larry Torquay, the second car on the mediums, makes his way through on Francesco Largo. And Jenson Rosen makes his way into the pits, and Tony Hietala now into second place. It's Sergio versus Tony for P1 and P2 here. Elder Hards versus newer mediums. This one here could go right to the end of the Grand Prix. But of course, one thing that Sergio will have to keep an eye on is if he battles heavily with Tony, that's going to allow all those further behind on the mediums to make some key moves as we head back down to turn 7.
Yeah, it's a race where they're going to have to think about quite a bit, and that's what will be going on at the moment. But a move there for Scott Holmes getting past top 8 and moving through to 13th. We're still looking to try and see anyone else who wants to dish out the overtaking into the braking zone. It seems like they're all just maintaining order and staying single file as well now through this middle sector. Now Laurie Tulkey is going to be one to keep an eye on because of course he's in really the same phase as Tony Hietala, but he's now the one who's got to try and make plenty of the overtakes. We'll take the wide line in hope of better traction, and he'll hope to have, well, one position cleared by the time he makes his way through this straight. Also keeping an eye all the while on Conrad Bohm as well, and his progress on his younger hard compound of tyres to try and make his way by. We jump on board now with the Ferrari, with Murphy just able to stay ahead unless Bohm can send it, which he cannot do at the moment. Meanwhile, very, very close stuff there between Ranieri trying to get onto the back of Dimas, and that is Mercedes versus Kick Saber at the moment as we make our way out of the final corner.
Of course, and that battle there as well helps Larry Talkie to gain in, as Ranieri there very late on the brakes into turn 1 and nearly taking out the back of that Kick Saber. It seems he's got a lot more pace here than Alexander Dimas, but just can't find the move here. Just stuck behind the back of the Kick for now as Tope's out in the pit lane. Another driver that's retired from the Grand Prix. Really not good for him at all in this race, as now Ranieri is looking for the move ahead of Alexander Dimas, who I don't think can fight it. But here goes Larry Talkie as well. He's looking to try and make his way through on these drivers on the hards, battling. Off the track goes Ranieri. Still makes that position, and now Larry Talkie looking to go ahead. Dimas does get the move done. So, big... Oh, what's happened there behind? Francesco Largo is stuck in the barriers, and Cameron Dowd, our championship leader, is going to fall all the way down to 13th place. Oh, dear me. Of course, it was a race which wasn't going his way anyway. Down in P8 before the pit stops, and now falls down to 13th, and that could be 0 points again here for Cameron Dowd, and maybe another 13th place for the young Scotsman. This is really not going well for him here and now. This is where the frustration comes through and the desperateness comes through to make that move.
It's the theme. It's the theme this season. It seems like anyone who gets themselves to the front of the championship, it all falls apart somehow in the race for them. And once again, another round where Cameron Dowd, of course, as you mentioned, it wasn't going completely ideal, but that is not what you want to happen and not what you want to come as well. Just more motivation that is going to be lost from a moment like that, and it's going to open the door for drivers like Conrad Bohm and of course the man on the charge, Tony Hietala, who very soon could be about to try take the lead and then make his run and make the bolt away and win this race here at Singapore. But it's the mid-pack where it's all going on and where it all will continue to happen. And let's see whether Larry Talkie can try and make the move as we jump on board with Hietala, who is very much going to now just try and dispatch that Ferrari as quick as possible. See if he can run away, but you know, he's going to be in such a great position. And it has always looked like it. Since he picked that strategy, since he was able to stay there, it always looked like that he was going to have this opportunity on the 24th lap of the race.
Indeed, as we make our way through under the Anderson Bridge once again. And Sabrino has a lot of work to do to keep Tony Hietala behind. But with the gaps that we've got forming behind now, I don't think it really matters if Sabrino battles hard. I don't think anybody else can actually catch up to the top two here. So Sabrino's got a lot of defensive work to do. We know how good Sabrino is. He's been around in the scene for a lot longer than Tony Hietala has. So we'll see if that experience can come to fruition here as we'll go on to 6 laps remaining here, heading on to lap 25. But also with the fact we know that Tony's got better tyres, he's caught up very quickly. He can also play this very passively and not just go all guns blazing and, you know, be like a bull in a china shop and go through. He can actually sit back and think, right, we'll plan it out, we'll save the battery and then dump it on one lap and go for a move. You'd imagine when that DRS turn 7 is the hunting point here.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, quite a big gap in behind. So I mean, unless they stop in the parking lot, really, and they both just, you know, completely. If they both just completely come to a halt, different story. But you know, they've got 5 seconds, so they can afford to battle mildly. But if they don't get to the chaos, then it's all good. Are we going to see the move? Sabrino defends to the inside. They are choosing to battle. Hietala trying to go the long way round, outside line to inside. Now the corner will go towards him, and it looks like the Red Bull driver will exit in front. And Sergio Sabrino tried defending it, couldn't do much though. And Hietala's medium tyres takes him to the lead of the race, and now we'll see what he can do.
Indeed, button pressed. Michele will get that reference. I don't know if anybody else will, but definitely a button press for that moment down towards turn 7. Hietala takes the lead of the Grand Prix here on lap 25 of 31, and now you'd imagine he can just pull away. It's his race to win now for Tony in the Red Bull, and of course, if he can win and Cameron Dowd doesn't score points, he's definitely your championship leader. So I think also Tony will be hoping his engineer doesn't say to him, oh, if you win, you're probably going to be leading the championship, because that's going to send you into all sorts of pressure. Just let him run his race with 6 laps to go and then tell him at the end that could be going towards him with 3 races to go. But we've still got 6 laps left here. We don't want to get too happy too quickly because we all know how I love a good commentary curse. I don't wish it on Tony, but you can never be too sure of it happening or not. As here is Conrad Bohm now looking to make the move on Joe Murphy. Of course, he's got 6 lap better tyres. He was in that podium fight. He's 6 seconds back. He goes for the send into turn 1. He has a half slide through the corner. That's now opened up a move for Pasquale Ranieri to go through.
It has indeed. Ranieri trying to get the power down. The Italian driver up against the Italian team. Are we going to see the move coming all the way around the outside? Well, Ranieri goes straight into the wall but continues on. And now that could leave him under threat as well because Larry Talkie has been waiting for this opportunity. Will there be the chance that will emerge very close into the braking zone? The Ferrari leaving ahead. Ranieri runs in deep. That'll put him level as well into the braking zone. So he was still able to keep his foot flat to the floor. And they're still going at it. Really, really close battling this between the pair of them as they make their way through. And now Larry Talkie finally is going to get his chance. Finally he's going to get the momentum to the inside line, but Ranieri continues to fight this. Great fighting, continuing to go on, and now it's getting to contact territory, not what we wanted. And also Dimas looking to try get in the mix now.
Well, this is F2, isn't it? This is PSGL F2 for you here at contact, battling wings, being fired off of the cars, and all these drivers stuck together, trying to make their way through the race in one piece as they head their way down towards turn 14. Of course, this is a big opportunity, though, for Cameron Dowds, because everybody screws up again. There's drivers with damage. He can start to pick them off one by one. A big opportunity for him to make his way forward and possibly score points when you thought at one point that would all be over. As they head into the chicane, Elliot Tomasetto battling it out with the V-carber Stephen Vasso. And Tomasetto gets the move done, and now it's Scott Holmes on the back of Alexander Dimas. We have been told the penalty could be removed, but of course we won't know that until the stewards' findings later on next week. But we make our way into lap 27. Of course, Tony Hietala flew off in the lead. And then we've got this big battle for the bottom half of the points here. I'll say that, but it's actually from Conrad Bohm down to Cameron Dowds. P5 to P12, all battling for points.
Well, it would be our 3rd race, which of course is completely being decided in the stewards room. I mean, the last 2, we've had the winner decided in the stewards room as well. And Zanderville Roberts able to keep it as he became the 100th F2 podium finisher. And then, of course, last time out, Conrad Bohm able to capitalise on the penalty for his rival and was able to take the win. Therefore, so while the stewards have had a deciding factor in the last 2 races when it comes to stewarding in terms of the win, probably not today, but in terms of this mid-pack and everything else that has been taking place, absolutely, I think they'll have something to say, and it could change the final few points paying position. But we'll continue to run on with this race, and Cameron Dowds will now have tried to regroup and go again from there, but it's not been an ideal day for him, and he'll just try and make something of it now with only a couple of laps to go.
Indeed, as we have 3 laps to go in this race. Scott Holmes goes deep into the chicane and I think loses out there, or at least makes a position on Elliot Tomasetto as they head through the final corner to begin another lap of racing. And of course, the gap at the front for Tony and Sergio hasn't got up as much as it has done in previous laps. Now, an element will be the fact that the mediums are going to drop off more than the hards, but also there's not really much of a need now for Tony to push as hard and ruin his race by hitting a wall or going off track and getting a penalty, or even ending his race by hitting a wall too hard. If you know you've got a decent gap ahead of Sergio, just keep it. No need to push too quickly on those tyres. There's now Larry Talkie on the back of Conrad Bohm, battle for P5 here on track. Larry goes to the outside all the way into turn 7. He goes off track slightly, keeps the move in towards turn 8 now as he goes up the inside. A move made for Larry Talkie. With that damage though, still showing how quick his tyres are and how much pace he's got as well in that McLaren. I think, given the fact he was so far behind and he was stuck behind Bohm, and I think it was Ranieri for so many laps, I think he'd be quite happy with a P5 here. Potentially a P4 or P3 if he can catch up to the to 3rd and 4th here.
Yep, that is how it very much is looking at the moment. So we're still trying to work out how, well, the rest of the order is going to, well, finish. And there's still a few more questions to be answered in the next few laps as well, as they make their way and are very nearly about to tick on to lap number 29 with Tony Hietala at the front of the field. So it's 3 to go, including this one, as now it is going to be very much a scrap, I think, beginning to develop now in the mid-pack, so we'll keep an eye on that. You've just seen a position change between Rosen and Largo, so that's just Rosen taking a 6-lap medium compound of tyres ahead of Largo, and Ranieri was once again looking close to the Ferrari of Conrad Bohm. There was a possible chance of a repeat of what we had a few laps ago into turn 1. Luckily we avoided it, and now Ranieri though is going to be looking fired up. He's only done one race, of course, so far this season. That was the season opener at Spain, and he's back with us now and having a decent showing at the moment. But we'll now try and maximise in these final few laps to see what is possible leaving Singapore.
Certainly, of course, lots of points on the board here for many drivers who don't have that many points on the board. Of course, Peter Presser-Ken will be looking to come through and take a podium. It'll be his first podium, and then one of 11 drivers who will have only one podium to their name heading into the rest of the season, which is just insane stats here. The drivers up at the front, it just seems that every race you never know who's going to be there fighting for the top positions. As Ranieri goes for the move up the inside of the chicane to go ahead of Conrad Bohm and makes a nice move. Now Dimas, who thinks he could have his penalty removed, he's still going to be looking to fight forward. He's on the back now of Conrad Bohm, who I think his race could have gone 10 times better. He kind of got into the wrong place at the wrong time, then he was stuck there, and now he's got no chance of making the podium. 20 laps ago, I was saying, hang on, he's got a good chance of a P3. Not anymore. Big shame for Conrad Bohm on that overcut strategy. Has not worked for him. As Stephen Vasso, his chance of points could be over as he has a time penalty of 3 seconds. Cameron Dowds here is still on the brink of scoring at least a P9 potentially because of the penalties ahead, but he needs to get a couple more moves on that. And I think then again, the fact he was stuck in a wall with Francesco Largo for 5 seconds, I think he'll also be quite happy with points, because at that point you'd think, oh, that's it, your race is over. You've got no chance of a top 10.
Yeah, it is very much ebbed and flowed this race, and there's been plenty of changes all the way through. Could we be about to see a change for P4? Does Lari Tulki still have the chance to make this move? He'll certainly hope so. We're on the penultimate lap of the race, and we're soon about to make our way onto the final tour. Hietala stretching ever more closer. And of course, this will be his second victory of the campaign, having won at Kota earlier on in what was a battle on the final lap of the race for the victory there. Well, it doesn't appear like there'll be a battle today. 2.4 seconds. And instead, it will be a comfortable drive all the way home to the checkered flag for him. But still, just over a lap to go now for him as he makes his way into the final few corners, and will begin the 31st and final lap of this 7th race of the season.
Indeed. Onto the final lap of the race. Tony Hietala has the lead by 2.8 seconds now, Omi. I mean, if he wins this race, he's your championship leader. He then has an advantage, a big advantage over Conrad Bohm, a slight advantage over Cameron Dowds. I mean, do you think at this point that would kind of maybe put him under more pressure? Because now he knows he's in that lead, he's got to defend it rather than chase it.
I think it absolutely could. But I think the great thing he has is he had a run at it. He had a dummy run at it last season.
Yeah.
Of course, Rapasa won it in the end. But having a go at a championship, having a full title challenge, and then it fall away in the final races, and then coming back from that, he's got that experience, which I think can definitely help him move forward. He got unlucky at a lot of points last season, so I think that's definitely going to help him as well. But yes, he cannot get too excited too early. He's now got to very much get into a defending mode heading into the final 3 races of this campaign. This was the point where it started to all go a bit wrong for him last season. This season, it's kind of going in the opposite way. It's beginning to, it's beginning to head to a road where this championship possibly could very much be on for him.
Definitely. A bit of an opposite of what happened to Max Verstappen going from 24 into 2025. As Tony Hietala makes his way through into the final couple of corners, an 8-point deficit will turn into a 7-point advantage. Of course, season 41 fell apart in Mexico. Season 42 comes alive in Singapore, and Tony Hietala takes the win in the Red Bull Arena Singapore ahead of Sergio Sobrino on the podium and Judah Presser-Ken. After a well-fought race, of course, penalties will probably be applied after what we saw earlier on. He will come to the line to finish 3rd. Joe Murphy rounding off the top 4. Larry Torquay so close to a top 5. But what a race for Tony. Sergio as well. I think hats off to him. P2. He went a little bit longer on his mediums and he made that work and comes out 11 seconds ahead.
That was absolutely fantastic. Strategy brilliance at the front of the field, and there will be plenty of smiles on the faces of the drivers and also the engineers that have helped them get there to across Singapore. We mentioned it was always going to be an important phase and an important part of the race. It absolutely was, and Hietala is the winner.
Indeed, and now has that championship lead and puts even more pressure on his back ahead of Sergio Sobrino. Another podium for him, of course. Took a P1 in the first race in Spain, went 4 races without points, got a P6, and now back up in the top 2. And I think as much as he got second, that was also a winning drive from him. I think either him or Tony deserved that. Of course, Pressacan third, ahead of Joe Murphy and Larry Sulkey. Ranieri, Holmes, Thomas Howard and Dimash, top 10. And then Cameron Dowd fell by, 5/10 of points. Another no point scoring race for Cameron Dowd. Vasso, followed by Quintino, Intiaz, Rowson, Largo, Kokeni, top 8, Alves and Roberts. That were your top 20. Of course, only 17 classified. Sorry, my voice is gone after that one. And you know what, Omi? For a Singapore Grand Prix, I think that might be one of the best I've commentated over. I mean, I think I've only commentated over 3 in the past because it's our 5th trip here in total in PSGL. You've probably only commentated on a couple of those. I mean, that was a proper battle out on track. You know, a Brexit battle, as some would like to call it.
Absolutely.
You motivated me so much to win the race. Thank you so much. But yeah, I mean, it is a relief to now be leader because I thought after last race, I mean, I got lucky with Cameron tabbing out or something in Brazil. He lost points there. After I got that quali ban, didn't get any points last race, and now I won, so it's great.
Definitely, and of course, 3 rounds to go. Belgium next time out. What are your thoughts about that track?
Well, I did a good race there last season, so hopefully it's gonna be even better. Should be good.
Indeed. Mate, before we let Tony go, any questions from you?
Well, I just wanted to ask, in terms of course, coming off last season, now as we kind of described in commentary, it's kind of going the opposite way for you. So, what's your mindset now heading into the final few races, where it was Luca Rapassa last season who I guess had the comeback and then started having his domination. You're kind of in that position. So, what's the mindset heading into the final few races now?
Well, it's just going race by race. I mean, these next 3 tracks should be quite good for me in terms of pace, so I'll just go 1 race at a time. Just gonna do my best in those.
That's a good approach. Yeah, it's perfect. It's how most champions go, don't they?
Indeed. Well, Tony, thanks for joining us. Great to have you here in the commentary box, and hopefully we'll see you again over the remainder of the season. So have a good week, and we'll see you in Belgium.
Thanks, mate.
And next we're going to bring in Tudor Pressacan, our 3rd place sitter, who after that comment I really hope gets a penalty for what he did at turn 11 at the hairpin, because that was really, really wrong, wasn't it, Tudor? Very, very disappointed in yourself for that. But that's only because of your comment to me in the chat. Apart from that, great drive, P3. Surely you'll be quite happy with that, because it was a very intense race from start to finish for yourself and Joe.
Yeah, about the hairpin, Tom also tire hooked me, so we discussed it, and there's no reason to report it. So yeah, I think I'm safe from that. Let's say. But yeah, overall the pace was really good on hards, even if it didn't look like that on the actual stream because of the gap in front. But it was really strong. Like I was so consistent, and the tire wear was also good, like when pushing. So yeah, that was good. And it was a bit shit, let's say, with Nelson overtaking him. Because I don't know, he lost his head or something, but yeah, I managed to get past him, and that was a pretty crucial overtake in the first stint. And yeah, the undercut worked really good.
Yes, definitely. And of course, pitting lap 18, I mean, was there any worry of trying to save the tyres to the end, or was the tyre wear that good you could just carry on at your normal pace?
I mean, I had to manage behind Joe until for 5 laps, I think, before I overtook him, because we had data, but you know, the data is the data and the actual thing is the actual thing. So I was doing like 3% per lap behind Joe, and then I started pushing, and I ended up on 78% at the end of the race. So I was on the limit, but it was good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It really, really was indeed. Now, of course, this is your first podium when it comes to PCF2 as a whole. How does that feel for you? Of course, this season, I mean, you've had a few fifths, you've had a few sixths, but you've been able to get to the podium. Do you expect this now for the final 3 races? Possibly you could maybe get another one at some point?
Yeah, I mean, the pace was really good the whole season, but like I managed to get 2 P2s in quali and 2 races this season, and then the race pace was also good. But then I made some stupid moves and stuff, and ended up in like top 6, top 5. But the podium was always there, looking at the pace. So I hope for more in the next races.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Looking forward to seeing how that's all going to play out for you. And congratulations on the podium. And hopefully maybe you can go one step better and maybe grab a win at some point as well.
Yeah, thank you guys.
No worries.
Bye.
That was Tador Presakan for us as well. And those are the 2 drivers that we get here to speak to tonight.
Indeed. But what a great race that was here in Singapore. Of course, it also changes the story of the championship. It was Cameron Davis who had the advantage pretty much all season long since round 2. Now that fell to him, and it goes into the hands of Tony Hietala, who we know had that championship lead with a couple of rounds to go last season in season 41. Of course, 3 races to go. We'll have a look at the calendar here heading into the remaining rounds. Of course, Belgium next time out, a staple track on the calendar, one we've been to many times before, one that we know lots of our drivers will be very quick at. So yeah, yet again, another really good race. And then, of course, Abu Dhabi and Jeddah. Abu Dhabi I'm not as keen on, if I'm honest. You don't normally get as many battles around there. For me, the main one I'm keeping an eye on is Jeddah, because that is going to be an intense race. I mean, at the moment, Cameron will be 5 or 6 points back from Tony, I think. Of course, I don't know if Cameron's going to lose 10 points in 3 races. That's going to be hard to do. So I think the possibility is we will head into the final race with a championship fight, or at least a possibility of one. So big couple of races up for both Davis and Hietala. And then, of course, Conrad Bohm, he's still going to be in the fight, still going to be there, but of course he's just got to do that little bit more. And now that Tony Hietala's picked it up, along with Cameron Davis' general pace, that makes that job even harder for Conrad.
It really, really does. And yes, these 3 races are going to be defining. As you say, we're most likely this season going to be able to get a championship fight. But is it going to be more of a long shot, or is it going to be a proper scrap? I think that's what's going to be the most interesting thing heading into those races. And as you say, it's all about Jeddah, really, when it comes down to. That's the one we're almost looking forward to. But I think Spa and Abu Dhabi will be, I guess, important championship-wise in terms of setting the picture for that round 10 finale that we're going to have.
Definitely, but it comes to the time where we end the stream. Of course, a great race here for round 7 of the championship. We're back next week, same time, 8 PM UK time here for the Belgian Grand Prix as we head into round 8. And then, of course, not long until we end that championship off in a couple of weeks' time in Jeddah. But, of course, that's all from myself and Omi here in the commentary box. Make sure to have a good weekend. Keep up with the action over PS on Monday. And then, of course, we'll be back here on Thursday for round 8. So have a good weekend, have a good week. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.